Did the iPhone 7 live up to the hype?
And should you rush to say hello to Google Allo? Vertical Hold is proudly brought to you by Alcatel. Welcome to Vertical Hold, the tech show where we channel surf through the headlines in search of the big picture. I'm Adam Turner, and I'm joined by a man who Googled Google and broke the internet, Alex Kidman. Once again, we're also joined by friend of the show, News Limited tech editor, Jennifer Dudley-Nicholson. Jen, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Alex, what's new in tech?
Not content with iOS 10 last week, Apple has this week made macOS Sierra available for its Mac computer line. Compatibility stretches all the way back to the start of the decade, which is quite impressive, but be ready for a hefty multi-gigabyte download if you choose to upgrade.
Telstra has conducted its first public 5G mobile broadband trial, offering data speeds of up to 10 gigabits per second over a short line of sight using 800 MHz spectrum in the 1500 GHz band. Telstra claims to have achieved up to 20 gigabits per second in other testing, although commercial deployment is at least 4 years away. Meanwhile, rival Vodafone is also expected to trial 5G later this year.
Google will announce its next range of in-house phones, tentatively tipped to be Pixel phones, on October the 4th or October the 5th in Australia thanks to that pesky international dateline. It's expected that they won't carry Nexus branding and will be manufactured by HTC.
As Google's Allo smart chat app hits the App Store, the search giant appears to be killing off the name Google Now for its smart search features. With a range of chat apps and several ways to interact with Google's machine learning smart search, the search giant seems to be streamlining everything under the Google Assistant name before it jumps into Google Home with its Amazon-style benchtop speaker, which will always be at your beck and call. So, Alex, it's been a big couple of weeks for iLovers. We've got macOS Sierra there. Have you been playing with the beta or have you just downloaded it new? What do you think?
Look, I steered clear of the beta, but I was one of the ones insane enough to install it on a machine this morning and have been testing it out. And by and large, I'm fairly impressed with it as a baseline OS. I think the reality for any operating system these days is that, and we said this about iOS 10 last week, in fact, the vast majority of kind of problems and of things that you'd want to do have been solved. So what you really want is for it not to crash all the time and preferably to be a little bit faster, and so far it is. I mean, the new features they're okay, but they're kind of Apple playing catch-up. They're really proud of the fact that they have Siri on the desktop now, as though Microsoft hasn't had Cortana on Windows 10
Cortana.
for some time.
Yeah.
Jen, have you had to play with Sierra?
I haven't as yet. No, I've been busy undoing some of the stuff that iOS 10 has done to my iPad. So Apple has kept me busy in other ways, actually. Just so, in case you need to know, a hard reboot apparently does get your iPad charging at the right speed again. Fun fact.
And see, this is why I don't like to install things on day one, whether it be Mac OS Sierra, iOS 10 or Windows or anything, because I'm sick of breaking my shit. I'm basically happy to wait for other people to find the bugs and then I'll download. And I'd say that for the general public as well. Unless it's your job to find the bugs in things, let other people do it. At least wait till the equivalent of Service Pack 1. Whatever the Service Pack 1 is of that device, then upgrade.
And let me be the one who's insane enough to do it.
I feel like this is the smarter option, but it requires some patience, which I often don't have. Especially if, I don't have necessarily, if I don't have the cash at the time to actually purchase something new, getting a software update on day one kind of makes it feel a little bit fresh. I should probably just change the wallpaper and be done with it.
So, Adam, Google has yet another app on its hands. I mean, it seems to have a new one every week. And in fact, this is not even the first app that it's released this week. But Google wants everyone to say hello to Allo. So what the heck is Allo?
I mean, because all Google users were sitting around thinking, you know what? We just don't have enough Google Chat options. That's what we're missing from Google. We need more apps. Back in May at the developer conference that Jen and I were at, they announced Duo and Allo. Duo is their new simplistic video chat app, which came out, I think, last month. And now we've got Allo as well, which is basically a chat app with a few funky things, emojis and stickers and all that rubbish, if you know that kind of thing. But for me, the big appeal is that they've built basically Google Smart Search into it, and Google Assistant it's kind of like another person that you can talk to in the chat app, like a bot within the app. So you can ask it questions, or if I'm talking to Jen and we're talking about going out for dinner, we can ask the bot, and within our conversation it can say, well, here's maybe somewhere you want to go, would you like me to book a table, which of course won't work right now but should work in the future. So it's sort of for if you live in a Microsoft world, it's a bit like how they're putting Cortana into Skype. If you're an iGadget person, then it's kind of like as if they built Siri into iMessages. I think that's, Jen, is that kind of how you would describe it?
That's fair to say. I think they've probably gone even one better than Siri, because they're actually, like, it's using neural networks and artificial intelligence essentially to kind of predict what you can reply, like what your reply is going to be, which I think is fascinating and so creepy. It's creepy when it works. It knows the future, and it knows what you're about to think, not what you're thinking currently, which is, really very disturbing, and maybe I'm just way too simplistic. It actually, like, it can analyze a photo, for instance, and it can suggest a number of responses to that photo that your friend has sent, cute cat, ugly cat, whatever the cat may be. Not necessarily a cat.
Then you realise it's a
This is the internet. We only send pictures of cats now. It's purely 100% cats.
To test it, I did actually put a photo of a caterpillar on it, and it recognized the caterpillar, so I was quite impressed with that. The big thing for me, though, apart from, sort of being really lazy and getting it to suggest things and also enlarging and shrinking text and stuff like that, Google Assistant is built onto this. So, this is the Siri-alike, but a very smart Siri-alike, I've got to say. And I can tell you an interesting fact, because if you type in interesting fact into Google Assistant, it will actually tell you one. Totally lived up to its name. Apparently Cookie Monster's first name is Sid. So if that comes up at trivia, you're going to be okay. Sid, as in Sydney.
Cool.
Have either of you asked it the lottery numbers?
Hang on a
No,
sec.
but that is a very... Hang on, I'll be right back. And that's it for this week.
Good feedback.
Tune in next week when Alex will be on his own. For me, I really like, and it's been worked with Google Search, Google Now, Google whatever you want to call it for a while, in that it understands the context of follow-up questions. So I can say, who is the Prime Minister of Australia? And it'll say Malcolm Turnbull, and I can say, how tall is he? And it will tell me how tall he is. If I said to Siri, how tall is he? It'd be like, what? Because it wouldn't know who he is. It can understand the context of follow-up questions, and that's a big thing that sort of sets it apart. But I've also found it's a bit more fussy when it comes to syntax than Siri is. I can ask Siri in about a dozen different ways what's on at the movies today, and she will find the nearest cinema and say, here's the 6 movies that are on. Maybe half of them work with Google, and then the other half are, here's something on Wikipedia about movies, or here's a link to Village or Hoyts. So they're recognizing your little colloquialisms and different ways of saying things is not quite there, but maybe that's just a machine learning thing. Maybe the more we talk to it, the more it will get the hang of that. I'm not sure.
I mean, Siri has been around for a while now. We're talking about, I think, the 4S it came out with. So I assume that that's one of those things that will come in time. And Google has a lot of smarts around voice recognition that I imagine it can bring to this. So we are in a preview stage at the moment. It will get better over time. But I think Google Assistant has the power behind it to be super creepy.
I think that the problem they have, though, is just getting people to use the app in the first place. Everybody's already got, even if you're a Google person, you've already got the chat app that you use, and then you've got to get your friends to use it as well. That's actually easier than I thought with Duo, because I've put it on my parents' phone, for example, because Duo is literally one button simple, and that's fantastic for someone who wants something that just works. Allo doesn't really have that appeal. I can't think of anyone who I know who I would say, here, use Allo because it's better than whatever it is you're using at the moment, whether that be WhatsApp or Skype or iMessage or Facebook Message, or the list goes on. So I think that's going to be their problem, just getting people to decide that maybe this is the one I'll give a shot to.
When you're talking about Google Assistant, and so Google Assistant to me is the hook, because once you start having a device in your home that will work with Google Assistant, it makes perfect sense to then have an app that's associated with that. So that's a potential way in that they don't have, and certainly it works across platforms, as you mentioned. Yeah, exactly.
I think it's in in October. It's probably not for Australia, but at least for the US, we're getting this benchtop speaker, like an Amazon Echo style, which I think also is not technically available in Australia. But it sits on your bench. You can get it to play music. You can tell it to order groceries. You can ask it what's the capital of Afghanistan or whatever. So that's, as you say, once you can use that, then you think, oh, well, hey, that thing's on my phone as well. So it might be the ecosystem that takes off rather than this on its own. So, Alex, you've had a bit of hands-on time with the iPhone 7 Plus. How's it feel?
Well, it feels big. It feels really big. I mean, in some ways, that's not, the world's most stunning observation, but Apple hasn't
This
really
is why
changed.
it gets paid the big bucks, people.
Yeah, it's the fancy words. Apple hasn't really changed the physical design that much, with the obvious notable exception, which we'll get to in a second, I suspect. Which means, of course, that for a phone with a 5.5-inch screen, it's a big thing in your hand. Which I guess is good considering what they charge for it. You feel like you're getting a lot of phone, but it can make it a little bit unwieldy. Other than that, and bearing in mind we're not that far removed from, when they were just heavily hyping it as magical and revolutionary and all the rest of it before people could actually get their hands on them, I've got to say I'm actually probably a little bit more impressed overall than I thought I would be, and I'm a pretty cynical kind of dude. Largely because its processor does live up to its promises. It's powerful. It benchmarks well, but it also actually performs in real life quite well. But especially because, at least for the 7 Plus, I've not had a great deal of hands-on time with the 7 as yet, but at least for the 7 Plus, the battery life is surprisingly good. And let's face it, this is an iPhone. One of the hallmarks of that series is meant to be that the battery life sucks. But I've managed to run one over multiple days without having to recharge, and you could never really do that before. Some of that apparently comes down to this interesting, not quite quad-core approach they have, where there are 4 cores, and 2 of them are power efficient, and 2 of them are not power efficient. High capacity numbers, and it flicks between the 2 depending on the task you're doing. The practical effect is that the battery does last.
Yeah, we've seen that kind of thing in desktop computers as well, haven't we? Where I think Macs and Windows machines that have 2 graphics cards, one for just doing your basic stuff, and another one kicks in that's a bit more power hungry for when you really need it. Same sort of concept, yeah?
Yeah, sort of. And I mean, given, again, that this thing costs the same as a whole bunch of Mac laptops you could buy, it perhaps shouldn't be a huge shock. They've also upgraded the camera in a really kind of intelligent way. They spend a lot of time hyping up the idea that they'll have really nice portrait photography later in the year with dual lenses. But right now what you'd use the dual lens for is the fact that one of them is a zoom lens and one of them is wide, but both of them are used for taking any photo and then stitched together. And it works quite well. I mean, you can, anyone can still take a really lousy photo with any camera on any smartphone. But this does a pretty good job of even making relatively mediocre photographers into fairly decent ones, as long as you can deal, again, with that physically large size. This is, of course, ignoring the elephant in the room, which is that lack of a headphone port. And I know why they did it. I mean, people have torn these things apart and they've gone, yeah, look, that big new Taptic engine, so it doesn't have a button, it's a feedback thing, and the larger battery and the larger camera have taken up all the space, and there's no space left for a headphone jack anymore. I still wish
no
they
headphone
hadn't
jack
done
for
it.
you. Yeah. So, Jen, what are you packing these days? Is it a toasty Note 7 or?
No, I wish. I missed the Note 7 so much, but I wasn't willing to risk my life for it or take my father's advice to actually charge it inside a saucepan beside my bed. So, no, I've gone back in time to the Galaxy S7 Edge.
Great
iPhone
for me.
Yeah.
Great phone. Look, and a great camera. So it's interesting to see, Apple trying something different with their cameras this year. They tend to hold back on that a little bit. However, I do like the fact that my headphones just plug straight into the device, as opposed to
living in the future
iPhone people.
Revolutionary, magical.
Yeah, magical.
Well, maybe they'll reintroduce it next year and it'll be magical again.
If it was anyone else, they'd go backwards, but not Apple.
No, it would be a new feature if Apple brought it in. So it really kills me, though, that they've taken out a universal standard and they're talking about it in a way that is magical and revolutionary and courageous, because nobody ever thought to do this before since the 1960s. We've actually been using headphone jacks quite, successfully, and it's such an accepted standard. I hate the fact that now they're saying, look, no USB-C because it's too large. Everybody should go Lightning, except we won't let you go Lightning.
Yeah.
And now we're taking away, something else and sort of replacing it with, this proprietary Lightning jack. If Sony was doing this, which they tried to do back in the day, after, the Walkman era failed and they started to come up with these weird Walkmans that had, bizarre plugs, I mean, we would have criticised them enormously. So it seems like Apple really should check themselves before they wreck themselves here, because it seems like they're really messing with accepted standards and sort of creating their own sort of cave for themselves.
This is the way I was talking to Apple about this the other day, and the way I basically put it is, what you're saying is the wheel. We've had it for 10,000 years. It's crap. It's old. We're introducing the square, because what do we need a wheel for? It must be terrible because it's old. Why would you want that? Let's just change it for the sake of change. That's really what it feels like here. That everybody, you'd be hard pressed to find a more universal AV connector than a headphone jack. Why do we really need to change it? The one thing that
the Apple TV that comes without a screen.
Or without HDMI inputs, actually. That's what I would think, actually. An Apple television would have an Apple TV welded on the back and glue in all the HDMI ports, because why would you ever want to watch anything else? That's classic Apple right there.
Yeah. I mean, Apple's dropped stuff before. They dropped the floppy drive first. They dropped the optical drive first. But at least there you could kind of say, yeah, look, the floppy drive, by the time they dropped it, it really was a bit small for the kind of storage we needed at the time. And
there was
network
a new
connections
universal
and stuff were
standard coming through.
in. Yeah. For the optical drive, and now, an awful lot of laptops don't do it. I think other smartphone manufacturers will probably be a little slower to pick up on dropping the headphone jack from their future phones.
I really hope you're right too, because I mean, this isn't something that we've stopped using recently. Certainly, people are using Bluetooth headsets currently, and I don't think that that's going to change. But there's a reason that corded headphones are so popular, because I've been to the gym before when I've had absolutely no charge and I've had to buy some headphones out of the vending machine. There are times when you actually need to plug in a set of headphones, and carrying around an extra device doesn't seem like the future to me just yet.
The one thing that encourages me is that I haven't got my hands on the little adapter that comes in the box yet, but Apple tells me that it uses the same DAC as the iPhone 6s, so the same little chip that converts the digital file into sound. So that's really encouraging, because I was a bit worried that a cheap and nasty DAC would mean cheap and nasty sound, because some of the third-party Lightning accessories you buy will have terrible DACs in them and the sound will sound really flat and appalling. But the fact that they're using the same chip as was in the iPhone 6s is a good sign.
See, I was a little bit more concerned, and I mean, having tested it, and my ears are perhaps not as sensitive as yours, Adams, but I was a bit more concerned about the fact that an additional adapter leading into Lightning was another way that it could actually pull out or fall out if I was out running, or even if it just kind of snagged on something. It's for an adapter, it is surprisingly robust. It clicks in quite securely, and it clicks and grips to the headphone adapter quite securely as well. So that side of it's been quite well engineered, but I suspect the sensible advice there for anyone picking up an iPhone 7 or 7 Plus is to just budget for about half a dozen of these things, so that you can always have one kind of in a bag or connected to the headphones that you use most frequently, if you're not already on the Bluetooth bandwagon, that is.
Yeah. And get some gaff tape to tape the adapter to your headphones so you can't lose it. Some Apple tape, of course, costs 10 times as much, but, it looks good.
Only available in white.
Until next year, then they'll come out with black.
Ooh, shiny black?
Oh, yeah, shiny black, absolutely. You'll pay extra for that, though.
One of the other features, of course, that they threw in, and it was, revolutionary and magical, was water resistance.
Courageous.
Courageous. They were quite cranky with me at one point when I described it as waterproofing, because they only want to refer to it as water resistant. And I had to chase them up on this, and there's a reason for this, and it's one of these things that I think people should probably be aware of. It is water resistant. It is IP67 rated, which means that they have tested it to a depth of, and I'm speaking off the top of my head, but I believe it's a depth of 1 meter for up to 30 minutes is the standard there.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's right, yeah.
However, water ingress on the actual phone isn't covered warranty. If your phone drowns, even if it's only in 5 centimetres of water, then you are strictly speaking, as per Apple's warranty, not covered by it. And that's why they're so keen on the phrase water resistant. Basically, the idea, as they've explained it to me, is that if you drop it in the bath, it should survive, but if the bath had soap in it, then maybe not. And if it dies, you may not be covered.
Yeah. So they're basically saying it's water resistant, but don't quote me on it.
Yeah, pretty much. I think they're taking a slightly safer attitude than, say, Sony, because Sony, of course, famously had, for one of its previous water-resistant phones, had lots of shots of people bouncing around in a pool, so people went and did that and the insides of the phones rusted.
Yeah, I can see why you want to err on the side of caution there, because I know when I've tested waterproof phones, the first thing I've done is just taken them out of the box, turn them on and drop them in a jug of water to see what they would do, which is always fun when it's, not yours. But I can see why they wouldn't want to encourage people to go out and do that. It's bad enough as it is, people snapping them, running steamrollers over them, whatever. They don't want people saying, "Oh, but you said this thing would survive."
Jen, have you ever drowned a smartphone?
Only on purpose. So I've only.
It was asking for it.
Ones that are water resistant, never waterproof. It's interesting though that Apple's come out now. I think this is a really useful thing for iPhone users because, certainly because there's so many iPhone users out there in the world. There's a lot of people who've dumped their phones in toilets and pools and jugs of water and sinks and all sorts of things when they're not smashing their screens in the back of cabs. So I think that this could be, it's kind of an undersold element of the phone, I suppose, but there's a reason for that too, because obviously it's been around for at least 2 years in other phones, and maybe you don't want to call it revolutionary when that revolution has already spun. But I think it will be really useful for people, assuming that they're not putting it in pools or soap, apparently.
Well, that just about wraps up another episode of Vertical Hold. Remember, if you've got any comments, as always, you can hit us up in the comments section on YouTube, via Twitter, or the Facebook Vertical Hold page. Thanks to Jen for joining us for the show.
Thank you.
And thanks everyone for listening. Remember, if you like what you hear, hit that subscribe button. Vertical Hold is proudly brought to you by Alcatel.